Amazing black diner owner rescues 10 truckers in blizzard. Discover the incredible honor revealed. Evelyn Jenkins stood by the diner's window, watching the first flakes of snow tumble like whispers from the gray sky. She felt that familiar heaviness in her chest, the burden of survival gripping tighter with each passing month. 20 years of her life invested in this small Midwestern diner, the smells of fried chicken and pecan pie mingling in the air, were now overshadowed by the dwindling patrons and sour economy. Memories of laughter shared over plates reflected on the walls now seemed like ghosts teasing her to remember what once was. She wondered, could the warmth she built over the years just be another recipe on the menu, fading away into something unrecognizable? Just then, her phone buzzed with a call from Rachel, an old friend. "Evelyn, you know about the blizzard, right? Trucks are stuck on the highway. It's going to get bad." Evelyn's heart sank. A part of her wanted to shut down, to retreat into the safety of her own fears. But another part, the part that had always pushed her forward, kicked in. She thought of the truck drivers she had heard share their stories, of time away from families, arguments, weariness. What if no one else opened their doors? Determination flooded her as she swung open the diner door, welcoming the storm and the weary travelers it dragged with it. 10 truckers tumbled in, shaking off snow like dogs after a bath, gratitude flickering in their eyes as they took in the warmth. Laughter formed a barrier against the howling winds outside, and Evelyn instantly felt some hope with their presence. But as dishes clattered and stories were exchanged, an unexpected tension brewed. "Can you believe these people?" a trucker sneered, his tone cutting through the lighthearted chatter. "Can't even drive and they're blocking the roads. What a mess." Evelyn's stomach twisted. Some patrons shifted in their seats, faces tightening as skepticism hung in the air thicker than the snow outside. The chatter dwindled as she wrestled with her own uncomfortable truth, that her heart ached for acceptance, not just for her food, but for who she was in a world that often overlooked her. The familiar recipe for chili began bubbling on the stove, its savory aroma a comforting backdrop for spiraling thoughts racing through her mind. She ducked behind the counter, the only refuge from both the storm outside and the storm brewing within. Did her culinary talent mean anything in the face of prejudice? Did she even belong in this diner she built with her own 2 hands? The weight of expectations pressed against her, and as she stirred the bubbling chili, it felt like a metaphor for her life, a mix of rich ingredients battling for dominance, teetering between overwhelming joy and despair. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening.
YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As heavy silence threatened to crush the mood, she knew this could be her moment to address the rising conflict, to push back against the prejudices that still lingered within her mind. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a newfound tension gripped the room, an unwelcome tightness hovering. A revelation about her own family legacy suddenly flickered in her thoughts, half-formed and raw. What if this moment could transcend the divisions forged by ignorance? What if she could channel the strength of her heritage, the unyielding spirit of those who came before her, to forge a unity in this fragile assembly? Evelyn held her breath, words tangled and ready to spill. But as the tension coiled tighter, she feared they might slip away. She was on the precipice of transformation, not just for herself, but for these weary souls who had ventured into her diner. The blizzard roared louder outside, a manifestation of the conflict swirling within, and as she stood on the brink, she sensed the weight of connection poised at her fingertips. Would she embrace it? Would they? The storm howled, and the moment hung heavy, awaiting her call to action, her truth to finally unfold. Evelyn's mind raced as she stood poised at the counter, her heartbeat loud in her ears. The weight of the moment threatened to drown her, yet deep within, a flicker of courage ignited. She took a steadying breath, willing herself to command the room with more than just her expected hospitality. "Listen," she finally said, her voice rising above the din of the blizzard. Instant silence followed, the kind that could crack the proverbial tension. "We're all travelers here, aren't we? Each one of us journeying through life, navigating twists and turns. Some well-trodden paths, others just rough roads pulled off course." The words echoed around her, as if bouncing off the diner's walls, reaching those who had entered and filled it with their frustrations and anonymity. She searched the truckers' faces, daring to make eye contact. Uncertainty flickered, but there was an underlying thread of recognition, a commonality she felt deep within herself. Each of you carries your own struggles, just like I carry mine, she continued, momentum building. You've got families waiting at home, plans all jumbled up by this storm, and I've poured years of my life into this diner, feeling the world change around me while trying to hold on to my piece of it. We're battling our own blizzards, aren't we?
The truckers exchanged glances, confusion mixing with curiosity. Evelyn observed them, assessing the flickers of empathy starting to emerge. She realized she had the power to reshape the atmosphere, to craft a moment of connection. "Why don't we share our stories?" she suggested, embracing the challenge. "Not just me serving you, but us as a family of sorts, even if just for this night. We all have tales that could warm this storm raging outside. What do you say?" A few moments passed, the air crackling with an energy that crackled like static electricity after a storm. Then one trucker, wearing a heavy coat that barely contained his broad shoulders, broke the silence. "My uncle used to own a diner too. Never thought I'd be sitting in one owned by someone like you." "Someone like me?" Evelyn pressed, not letting the insinuation slide. Defiance surged within her. "You mean a black woman trying her best in this business? Or someone who understands that survival takes more than just grit? It takes heart." His eyes widened, an awakening within them as he shifted in his seat. "I didn't mean it like that. I know," she interrupted gently, smoothing over the crack in conversation. "I've faced a lot of you don't belong here moments, but I do belong, and so do you. We all have stories that could change someone's mind." She inhaled deeply, centering herself. The simmering chili began bubbling behind her, filling the diner with a fragrant, nostalgic aroma. The flavors melded, much like the stories she hoped would intertwine that evening. "I believe that if we share these parts of ourselves, we can create something beautiful, even amidst the chaos. Who's willing to start?" Her heartbeat thrummed in her throat, anticipation gripping her as she watched for the first brave soul to open their mouth. The truckers hesitated, casting furtive looks among themselves, but something shifted. Vulnerability mingled with intrigue. Another trucker finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "All right, I'll go. Ever been stuck in a snowstorm at a diner with no coffee? You find out real quick who your friends are." The corners of Evelyn's mouth turned up as a ripple of laughter danced among the group. She had ignited a spark, forging the beginnings of a connection that could transform both her diner and herself. But just as she felt the warmth of their communal energy lift her spirits, a loud crash from the entrance startled everyone. The door slammed open, a gust of icy wind blasting into the room and stealing the moment she had worked so hard to create. Standing in the doorway, a figure draped in snow and layers of winter attire peered through the white cloud, and Evelyn's heart dropped. This new arrival was far from a tattered traveler. The look in his eyes was harrowing and fierce. "Is this place even open? I need to talk, and I need to talk now." The storm outside seemed to pale in comparison to the intensity emanating from him.
Evelyn's pulse quickened anew, the fragile unity she built hanging in the balance as the new storm brewed within her diner. Would this intervention disrupt everything, or would it push her to rise even further? The moment had returned, but this time it leaned perilously close to defining how she would confront her past and mold her future. Would she find the strength to face whatever challenge now loomed before her? Evelyn's breath caught, and her heart raced as she locked eyes with the newcomer. There was a sharpness in his gaze that shifted the dynamics in the diner. She felt the weight of the moment compress. The ambient warmth from the chili, the lingering whispers of shared stories, all of it was overshadowed by the urgency radiating from this figure. "What do you need to talk about?" she asked, her voice steady yet tinged with uncertainty. The other truckers glanced at each other, curiosity piqued by the sudden intrusion. "I'll explain inside," he said, brushing off the snow as he stepped deeper into the diner, sending a wave of cold air behind him. "I don't have time for pleasantries." Evelyn took a cautious step forward. This was the moment that could either tear her carefully orchestrated connection apart or forge it into something stronger. "We all have time to listen. Just a moment of your story can matter," she insisted, asserting herself despite the disquiet bubbling in her gut. The man's shoulders relaxed marginally at her words. He looked at the truckers, then back at her. "If you really think it matters." His voice softened, revealing hints of weariness as he sank into a booth by the window. As Evelyn approached him, she felt compelled to stake her claim, not only on behalf of the diner, but for her own journey. "It matters," she affirmed,
catching herself reveling in that newfound strength. What's going on? Seconds ticked by. The diner, which had once seemed filled with energy and expectations, grew quiet once more. Even the truckers leaned in, sensing the simmering tension around this unassuming conversation. "I'm here because of a woman I once loved," he began, vulnerability flickering in his eyes. "She was here a few months ago. Said she was passing through, but that was the last I heard from her. My gut tells me something's wrong. She should have been back by now." Evelyn felt a pang of recognition. The longing in his eyes mirrored her own struggles of being left in the dark, an unshakable sense of something unresolved that gnawed at the insides. What did her journey look like, she prompted, even as she felt her own vulnerabilities press against her. Free spirit, always chasing the horizon. She's a trucker, just like these guys. But now, it feels like I'm frozen in time. He paused, and Evelyn could see his defenses breaking, layer by worn layer. "I know what it's like to feel lost while trying to guide others," she said, her voice steadying with purpose.
You can't control the storm, but you can choose how to ride out the chaos. With her words, Evelyn unexpectedly unveiled a part of herself that had been neglected for too long. Reflection surged through her. How often had she felt trapped in cycles, trying to maintain her diner despite the fear of losing it all? The thoughts pulsated through her, revealing layers she thought she had buried beneath servitude and survival. "This diner is a place of second chances," she continued, rallying the truckers into a shared focus. "Just like your experience is a chance to learn what you're truly capable of when your fears fade into the background." Encouraged by her own knowledge of resilience, Evelyn faced the group, now captivated not just by the urgency of the conversation, but by the reality they shared, their paths intertwined through choices made in the face of adversity. Suddenly, another trucker spoke up, his voice resolute. "If she's out there, we'll find her. No one should be left alone on the roads we drive." Evelyn felt the collective strength resonating around her, that familiar warmth she had just started to kindle before the storm's arrival, now reignited. The diner's spirit strengthened. She was no longer merely an owner behind the counter, but a leader, forging a community through shared narratives. The man's eyes brightened, filled with an ember of hope he had sorely missed. But just as quickly, the determination changed into another flash of fear. "But if I don't get her back, I'll always regret waiting too late to act." The press of his urgency echoed within her. This was not just another shared story. It was accountability, a chance for her to transform moments of personal darkness into guiding lights. "Then let's get to work," Evelyn declared, her voice now a clarion call. "Let's find her and seize control of our narratives." But just as momentum built, another gust swept through the door, and everyone turned to see a new presence stepping across the threshold, suggesting yet another storm brewing on the horizon. Who was it now? And what would this new arrival mean for the fragile connections they had forged? Would Evelyn have to confront even greater obstacles, or was this yet another opportunity to rise beyond fear? Evelyn's focus narrowed as the new figure stepped into the diner, shaking off snow like a dog fresh from the winter storm outside. This was not just any patron. There was a palpable tension wrapped around him, a stark contrast to the warmth emanating from shared resolve in the room. She instinctively straightened her posture, readying herself for whatever challenge lay ahead. The newcomer's sharp eyes scanned the diner with concern, finally landing on the group that had gathered around her. The urgency in his expression was unsettling, pricking her intuition. He approached with renewed purpose, his boots thudding softly on the diner's linoleum floor, as he zeroed in on the booth where the man spoke of his missing love.
"I need your help," he stated plainly, as if the diner's quiet hum could be broken so easily by such an urgent plea. The atmosphere twisted in that instant, threading uncertainty through the air. The determination she had kindled only moments before flickered, teetering on the brink. "Why should we help you?" one of the truckers challenged, crossing his arms defensively. Evelyn felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She sensed the fragile balance of trust they had begun to build threatened by the chilling newcomer. "I need to find my sister," the man explained, his voice cracking slightly. "She went out during the storm 2 nights ago. I haven't heard from her since." The desperation in his tone was palpable. No one could ignore it, least of all Evelyn. Inside, Evelyn's heart clenched and filled with empathy. Here was another soul, searching, feeling the crushing weight of uncertainty. Why was it that journeys often brought one to such layers of vulnerability? She could see it mirrored in the trucker's eyes as he softened, his resolve dampening. This was not an isolated incident. It was yet another tale spun from the same existential thread that had entangled her own heart. "Okay, let's hear what we can do," she said,
her voice gaining strength, this time infused with a commanding presence. She took a step forward, allowing for the courage she had uncovered to envelop her, igniting the room once again with purpose. First, tell us everything you know about her, where she was going, and who she might be with. As he spoke, his words began painting a picture, a brother's worry shaped by love. She mentally noted the details, feeling her mindset shift from a mere diner owner to an orchestrator of fate, piecing together a plan. The truckers exchanged glances, some already nodding, ready to dive into the unknown. It was amazing how quickly the dynamics shifted. The initial hesitation before the storm was metamorphosizing into an active commitment to help. Evelyn began strategizing. They would form teams. They had to utilize resources, weapons of community strength against the biting cold embracing them from outside. How often had she stifled her instincts, hiding behind the counter rather than stepping boldly into the world? This was her moment to galvanize her own transformation. Let's gather supplies, phones, GPS, anything that might help, she directed, her tone clipped with urgency. And we need to spread the word. The more eyes watching, the better our chances. She realized that this wasn't just a matter of covering ground. This was a synthesis of strength, an embodiment of her belief that each individual was more than they appeared to be. As the truckers rallied to action, she found herself grasping the backbone of leadership she had yet to fully own. Instead of staying anchored in the safety of the diner, she melded into the chaotic fury of their initiative.
The energy in the room was electric, an undercurrent of shared purpose fueling her every decision. Yet as the first whispers of a plan began to take shape, Evelyn caught sight of the first trucker who had spoken out, his expression now contemplative. What if something worse happened out there? His voice trembled, cutting through the newfound resolve. The reality of their undertaking began to settle like a weight upon them. Her own heart raced at his question. What if they were stepping into a disaster rather than a rescue? But as she looked around the diner at the faces reflecting newfound determination, something deep within urged her onward. The challenge was greater than mere logistics. It was about confronting fear head-on, unraveling her own layers of doubt while guiding others through theirs. The stakes had risen dramatically, a ticking clock against the blustering storm of personal demons housed not only within her walls, but inside each of them. Then we'll face that fear together, she declared, her voice unwavering. This is our moment to rise, to own our stories. With eyes broadened by resolve, Evelyn moved towards the exit, an unmarked path stretching ahead of her, fraught with uncertainty. What awaited them outside? Would they find the missing loved ones, or would they forge ahead only to face their darkest fears, the realization that some storms cannot be weathered? The blast of cold air hit Evelyn with an almost tangible force as she stepped out of the diner, a reminder of the storm's relentless grip. The world was a blurred canvas of white, the snow swirling in chaotic dances around her as she sought clarity in the chaos. A deep breath steeled her nerves. She was on the precipice of something monumental. Okay, listen up. She raised her voice above the howl of the wind, commanding attention from the truckers flanking her. The half-dozen men had donned layers against the cold, crude hats pulled low over their brows. We're on a mission. Check your gear, any tools that can help us in search or communication. Eyes darted around, assessing, an untested resolve mixing with apprehension. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing upon her shoulders. Here she stood, a diner owner turned accidental leader, grappling with her own inadequacies while rallying others to confront a nightmare of uncertainty. The brother's words echoed in her mind. She hasn't been seen since. Her fists clenched against the chill, a reminder of their urgent goal. Gather anything you think might help. Flashlights, flares, blankets. We need to cover ground. There was an instinctive cadence to her voice now, a rhythm that echoed power back to her. As the truckers moved, each engaged with a purpose, she felt a flicker of adrenaline surge through her. Stepping to the forefront, she guided the operation. I'll manage the communications, she announced, encouraging herself as much as them. One person tracks our locations while we fan out, and we'll reconvene within 2 hours near that old barn off West Road. Doubt slithered in at the edges of her determination. What if she was fooling herself? What if they didn't find her? What if they didn't come back? Then she recalled the brother's desperation. His sister's absence was a reflection of her own life's unanswered questions and longings. Wasn't denial a form of paralysis, just as real as the snow that blanketed them now? Let's go, she urged, her voice breaking through her uncertainty, her own fear transformed into fortitude. As they scattered into the swirling storm, her heart quickened. She fell in step with a grizzled trucker named Hank, his face a mask of experience and empathy. Their path unfolded, thick snow crunching beneath their boots, prioritizing the brothers' memories about her last whereabouts. Hank stole glances, parsing her frame, his eyebrows knit into thoughtful lines. "You sure about all this?" he asked, voice gruff yet cautious, threading concern into the biting winds around them. "I can't just stand back," she replied, surprising herself with the clarity of her resolve. "I know what it feels like to lose someone, and I will not let fear silence us." A moment of silence enveloped them. Hank nodded, visibly reassessing his impression of her. She saw him measure her willingness against the storm's cruelty, the internal calculation shifting something deep within their exploratory dynamic. Once at the barn, they surveyed their surroundings, a skeletal structure silhouetted against the swirling snow. The moment felt almost sacred. It was here that genuine camaraderie blossomed in the harshness. The flicker of lanterns illuminated weary but determined faces, creating an atmosphere charged with collective purpose. Evelyn's heart thundered under the shifts of anxiety and adrenaline. She initiated a recounting of the brothers' details, aligning plans to comb through surrounding fields, knowing each moment counted. But a lingering question gnawed at her. What would they find in the depths of the night? Not just the missing sister, but the elements of themselves long buried beneath their own storms. Every decision she made in those fleeting minutes weighed heavily on the future of her and the truckers. The stakes were higher than simply a search. They were tests of character, resilience, and the humbling power of shared burdens. Then a distant shout sliced through the storm, a voice borne on the icy winds, hopeful and desperate. They turned, adrenaline coursing once more. What awaited them on the other side? Would that voice herald a triumph or tumult anew? Evelyn felt the gravity of the moment press upon her. They were about to find out what they were truly made of. The sound of the voice, drowned out by the profound cracks of thunder and the biting wind, stirred something primal in Evelyn.
She could not grasp who might be calling out, but the potent blend of hope and fear quickened her pulse. She understood in that split second that they were not just searching for a missing person. They were also awakening parts of themselves they had long since buried. "Follow me," she shouted, more to herself than anyone else, as she pushed toward the direction of the voice. The truckers fell in closely behind, their instincts sharpened by the rising tension in the air. The scene transformed. The barn with its dim safety was left behind as they plunged back into the chaos of the storm. The snow whipped at their faces, fierce and stinging. Each step was a calculated risk, but the prospect of discovery, of connection, kept her moving. The clouds parted just enough for a moment to give them a glimmer of clarity. Evelyn turned to Hank, redirecting their energy. "We need to split up again, 2 teams, all take turn to lead one." Instinctively, she scanned their faces, seeking affirmation. Hesitation flickered in their expressions, a testament to their own fears. "Time is critical," she pressed, "and let that voice guide us." Even as she spoke those words, an unsettling knot twisted in her stomach. Could her own desire to help compel her beyond her limits? The thought nagged at her, but she quashed it with determination. The 2 groups formed quickly, Hank watching closely as she assigned roles. "You with the flashlight, keep it low," she instructed a younger man whose eyes betrayed his uncertainty. "And you with the rope, stay alert for any signs of movement." As they ventured deeper into the storm, the haunting echo of her own self-doubt shadowed her every move. Was she truly equipped for this? Each step felt like a test of her newly forged leadership, the weight of responsibility morphing from a burden to an unexpectedly empowering mantle. "Just listen to your instincts," she told herself, voice reverberating through her mind as ostensible reassurance. She might not have had formal training in crisis management, but she had an innate understanding of loss, desperation, and urgency, weaving together a fabric of authenticity. Minutes blurred into a journey that felt eternal, until suddenly, like a beacon, they spied a flicker of light in the distance. It was faint but unwavering, a promise that drove them forward with renewed urgency. A part of Evelyn feared what lay ahead, while another part craved the confrontation of unknown truths. As they neared the source of the light, an indistinct figure materialized in the brilliant haze of snowy whiteness. Evelyn's heart raced as she took a deliberate step closer. What if this was the sister, or a phantom of her own making? What if the moment of discovery stripped her of the fragile sense of control she had achieved? With each footfall, she felt the weight of her mission, a visceral reminder that personal growth often emerges through the act of confronting the abyss.
This search had morphed into a deeper exploration of her own fears, testing the tenacity of her soul. "Stay close," she directed, her voice steady now, infused with urgency. She could feel adrenaline igniting in her veins, propelling her beyond trepidation into a fresh embrace of courage. The figure wavered brightly against the storm, glimmering just beyond reach. But then, as they drew closer, doubt loomed once again. Was it truly a rescuer's glow, or an illusion crafted by the chaotic desires of their hearts? Each face behind her exuded a mixture of hope and trepidation, their fate entwined with her own. The moment saw them grappling with their emerging identities, and Evelyn confronted the most incendiary revelation yet. Her own resolve to lead them was not merely an act of duty, but a cyclical drive towards becoming the person she had always aspired to be, competent and strong. With the winds howling like vengeful spirits around them, she focused on the figure ahead. "We're coming," she shouted, fear falling away to a determination sharper than the frigid air, ready to embrace whatever awaited them in the tempest. But beneath her growing sense of purpose lay the shadow of an unsettling thought. What if this search unraveled her, revealing unbidden truths too daunting to face? As they approached, the flicker of hope loomed larger, intertwining with the turmoil of her burgeoning strength. They were on the edge of revelation, and every fiber of her being braced for the triumph or devastation that lay just beyond. The figure resolved into a human silhouette, distinct against the swirling chaos. Anxiety gripped Evelyn, mingling with the adrenaline thumping in her chest. The moment felt colossal, a crossroads where her uncharted aspirations met the sharp reality of leadership under duress. "Keep moving," she urged. The urgency of the shout served as both an anchor and a rallying call, vibrating with her newfound resolve. She commanded the group forward, instinctively reaching for the light that might lead them to safety, to understanding, or a painful reckoning. As they drew closer, the figure shifted slightly, its outline becoming clearer. A woman, cloaked in heavy winter clothes, her expression unreadable in the storm's glare. Evelyn wrestled with curiosity and trepidation. Was this the answer to questions they had not yet voiced, or merely another fragment of their collective fears? "Who are you?" she called out, her voice threaded with uncertainty. The wind swallowed her words, but the woman turned toward them, eyes burning with fierce determination despite the icy wind. "I'm here, I can help," the woman shouted, her voice steady as a mountain stream. A flicker of relief surged within Evelyn, born on the back of her own unrelenting need to grasp at the threads of destiny, the notion that they might emerge whole from this chaos. The group moved as one, gravitating towards the woman's beckoning.
As they reached her, the storm seemed to abate slightly, as though the tempest understood that this moment required a fragile calm. The woman wasted no time. She surveyed each of them, her gaze penetrating, as though testing the inner fortitude of their souls. "Where's the missing person?" she demanded. Without hesitation, Evelyn recounted the tale, the heartache and the bonds unspoken, her voice gaining strength. With every word, a thread in her own fabric of bravery was woven tighter, the validation of her purpose steepening. After a brief exchange, each member of their group took a step closer, their collective heartbeat syncing with the hope radiating from the new woman. But as she began directing them, issuing quick commands that sounded both confident and commanding, a flicker of doubt ignited within Evelyn again. Was she willing to relinquish control over this mission, a control that had become her lifeline? "Wait," she said, crystallizing her thoughts into a voice that sounded more like a plea than a command. "I think we should... I want to lead." The moment hung heavy in the air, her words pulling at the delicate threads of trust that had been stitched in frustration and fear. As the woman's eyes softened, Evelyn felt every gaze in the group turn toward her, uncertain yet expectant. It was a silent confrontation of wills. Could she proceed without jeopardizing the collective aim? What were the implications of her assertion? Before the other woman could respond, Hank stepped forward, his face set with unwavering belief. "We all trust your instinct, Evelyn," he declared, his voice cutting through the tensions like a knife. "Lead us." The weight of expectation crashed back down on her, propelling Evelyn into a whirlwind of emotions. The dynamics had shifted. No longer was she simply a participant in the search. She was the leader, with newfound trust placed in her hands, igniting both exhilaration and fear. "Right," she uttered, a plan forming in her mind. "If the missing person is close, we need to keep moving. Every second counts." She articulated a strategy, her confidence blooming with each deliberate decision. Search patterns, methods of signal communication, vital roles for each of her companions. The swirling winds, once a monstrous adversary, became a backdrop to her fervor. Her emerging command charmed the group, the tension melting into focus. Yet it also unearthed a deeper nerve within her. What if leadership demanded more than she was willing to offer? The battle between authenticity and ambition roared to life within her, each choice highlighting the severity of her role. And just as the renewed objective settled into an urgent rhythm, the winds began to howl anew, howling like vengeful spirits, reminding them they were not free yet. "Stay alert," she cautioned, as they pushed onward, the fabric of their unity testing the boundaries of both her resolve and their collective skills. With every step, the confrontation of her emerging self, a leader, a guide, and perhaps ultimately a beacon of hope, became more intricate. But as they forged deeper into the unknown, a critical thought cut through her determination, prompting a chilling realization. While she was leading them forward, was she truly ready to guide them through the dark corners of her own uncharted past that threatened to surface in shadows? The journey had transformed, the stakes rising higher than just a search for another. This was a quest for her own identity, signaling revelations that could alter everything she thought she knew about herself and what it meant to lead. Ahead lay uncertainty, both terrifying and beautiful, a reflection of the potential within her, waiting to be unleashed in the depths of the storm. Evelyn pressed onward, her mind racing alongside her heart as she led the group through the brutal winds. Each command felt like a weighty affirmation of her newfound role, a test of both her leadership and the vulnerability she had begun to confront within herself. The terrain was treacherous, snow cloaking the path in a deceptive hush that masked its dangers. The gnawing uncertainty threatened to derail her concentration. She could almost hear the echo of self-doubt whispering in her ear, urging her to turn back. The biting cold struggled to penetrate her resolve, yet it was only a momentary distraction. She glanced at her companions, their faces frozen in determination, each one mirroring a collective grit but mingled with her own spiraling thoughts. If they believed in her, perhaps she could find a way to believe in herself. "Split into pairs," she instructed, her voice steady yet internally quaking. "Hank, Nina, you're together. Keep an eye on the perimeter." Evelyn's decisions became sharper as she allocated tasks, each choice a stitch in the tapestry she was weaving, a tapestry of leadership that hung precariously above her like a stage set for an unscripted drama. As they scattered through the snow, she felt the weight of being the anchor for their hopes. A flicker of exhilaration ignited deeper within her, igniting a desire to conquer the inner landscape of her fears. With each successful command, her grip on the growing responsibility seemed to solidify. Yet beneath the surface, like icy waters running beneath the snow, the coldness of fear still lingered. The fear of failing them, of leading them into an abyss birthed from her own insecurities. The moment of quiet that followed their separation allowed her a brief respite, but also a chance for reflection. Her thoughts spiraled back to the figure in the distance. Was her assertion of leadership simply a facade, an impulsive grasp at control? What if the very essence of her leadership was a betrayal of the collaboration they'd all relied upon to make it this far? But before she could sink too deeply in doubt, a shout broke through the howling winds. "Evelyn!" It was Nina, her voice strained but clear, cutting through the cacophony of the storm. Heart racing, Evelyn rushed toward the sound, each step a counterpoint to her gnawing fear. As she neared, Nina emerged, face flushed with excitement despite the cold. "We found tracks! Over here!" The urgency in her tone pulled Evelyn from the abyss of her thoughts and redirected her focus back to their mission. "Great work," Evelyn replied, her voice renewed with purpose. The promise of a breakthrough sent adrenaline surging through her veins, reigniting the fire within. They followed the trail, instinctually falling into a rhythm, each movement becoming less about her leadership and more about their shared goal. But as they advanced, a sudden realization sliced through her moment of triumph. What if the tracks led them to something more than just the missing person? A confrontation with her past, a reckoning of the invisible chains that had long held her back. The thought quickened her breath. She found herself an unwilling participant in an exploration into her own dark corners while trying to lead others. As the party pressed deeper into the storm, a spark of intuition flared in Evelyn. She sensed the same storm that had threatened to engulf them might also clear a path to understanding herself. Would this be the moment she faced whatever lay hidden within, or would she cling to the outer facade of leadership, fearful of the inner truths? With each step, the path ahead twisted, much like her internal struggle, weaving unpredictably toward an unknown destination. In the silence that blanketed them, the haunting echoes of unresolved fears lingered, reminding her that the true challenge was just beginning. And as they rounded a bend, an unexpected figure loomed in the distance, crystalline against the storm. Would this meeting force a confrontation with her past, or lead to something entirely unimagined? As they rounded the bend, the figure took shape, transforming from a blurred silhouette into a distinct presence. Evelyn's heart raced. The resemblance was uncanny. The last time she had seen that face, it had been shrouded in disappointment. The image of her father, tall and stoic, crystallized before her, a specter from a past she thought she had left behind. "Dad!"
The word escaped her before logic could intervene, and the chilling winds whipped it away, leaving only an echo that danced back to her. Shock rippled through her, pulling the group short in their tracks. "Evelyn?" His voice cut through the blizzard, filled with a mixture of disbelief and concern. As he stepped closer, the snow spiraled around him like a vortex, contrasting sharply with the warmth mirrored in his eyes. In that moment, the weight of unresolved emotions surged to the forefront. The years of silence screamed louder than the howling wind. Evelyn felt a wave of conflicting emotions deep within her, each pulse a reminder of long-buried grievances.
This was not how she had envisioned facing him again. Cradled in ice and uncertainty, a visceral blend of anger, hurt, and long-held longing gripped her throat, momentarily choking her voice. "Why are you here?" she managed, her tone sharp, reflecting the clenching tension in her chest. "I came looking for you. I couldn't stay away knowing you might be in danger," he replied, concern etching lines into his weathered face. They locked eyes, a turbulent sea of past grievances crashing against waves of present urgency. Here stood the very embodiment of her fears, the man whose absence had shaped so many of her insecurities and doubts about her worth. This was no mere exclamation of fate. It was a confrontation, an invitation to dismantle walls she had so painstakingly built. Before she could respond, the wind shifted, hurling snow toward them like a judgment of their past. She weathered the sting, grounding herself in the present, but knowing the conversation would strain the fabric of their shared history. How could she lead others, this crew she had just begun to trust, while her own foundations felt as fragile as the ice beneath their feet? The moment hung suspended, filled with unspoken truths and realizations. Would she unravel her past, or allow it to suffocate her forward momentum? Had he truly come looking for her out of concern, or was it a self-imposed obligation driven from guilt over his abandonment? The team stood off to the side, their breath visible in the frigid air, clearly sensing the tension. Evelyn resolved to seize the unexpected encounter as an opportunity for her growth. She ushered her fears aside like gusts of wind aiming to scatter dust. "Dad, if we're going to survive the storm, we need to put our issues aside. We're searching for someone in danger," she said, her voice steadying with each word. "We can talk later, and I will need honesty from you, but right now..." Just as the words left her lips, a chilling realization gripped her. The past linked their journeys, but it also threatened to derail the mission at hand. Standing there, she understood that if she could confront her fears with her father, she could do so with anyone. This was not merely about finding the missing person. It was about unearthing the strength buried deep within her, the strength she had kept dormant for far too long. "Lead the way, Evelyn," her father said, a glimmer of pride warming his gaze. The voice of her past fueled her resolve. She turned to the group, now more determined than ever. "Let's move," she commanded, turning her back to the specter of doubt and the unspoken sentiments. With each step forward, the storm became a catalyst of transformation, igniting the embers of courage deep inside. She would confront her ghosts later, but first there was a mission, one that would forge the path ahead. She could feel the presence of her father walking behind her, each stride an echo of potential reconciliation, interlaced with their shared struggle. And as the storm howled around them, Evelyn caught a glimpse of something shimmering in the distance, hidden in the blizzard's haze. Would they find what they were searching for, or unearth far more than they had anticipated? As they pressed onward, the swirling snow began to shift, revealing trails of desperation intertwined with hope. Evelyn felt the fire inside her rekindle, the echoes of their shared journey crystallizing into a shared purpose. The ghost of her father behind her, the remnants of their troubled past faded into the background, igniting a strength she never realized she held. "Focus on the search," she instructed, her confidence soaring with each footfall. "What lies ahead isn't just about survival. It's our chance to connect and confront what we've been avoiding for far too long." The truckers looked at each other, their determination underscored by her words, infusing the breath of life into their mission. Suddenly, the sharp outlines of a figure peeked through the sheets of driving snow, sending her heart racing. Compelled by instinct, she waved her arms and shouted with fierce urgency, "We're here! Over here!" The ethereal presence solidified, the light of a lantern flickering in the storm, illuminating the scene with an otherworldly glow. The woman they had been seeking stood there, bedraggled and cold, but undeniably alive. A wave of relief surged through the group as she stumbled toward them, recognition dawning on Evelyn, a fierce drive taking hold of her spirit. Reaching the woman, she grasped her arms, enveloping her in the warmth the blizzard refused to provide. "I thought I lost you," the woman murmured, tears freezing on her cheeks. Evelyn could hardly breathe. the expectation of unity threading them together, punctuating the importance of connection forged under adversity. "You're safe now. We're all in this together," she assured, the words spilling from a place of intrinsic truth. Her moment of personal triumph infused vitality into the weary atmosphere, merging fragments of individuality into a cohesive whole. The search party gathered, surrounding the newfound sister in a cocoon of warmth and compassion. For Evelyn, this was the zenith of her growth, not merely the act of rescue, but the ability to transcend her past constraints. Here in the swirl of emotions and icy winds, she had become more than a diner owner. She had transformed into a leader, a beacon of hope through chaos, perfectly poised between healing and strength. As they triumphed together, Evelyn turned, her gaze locked with her father's. The unspoken acknowledgement lingered between them, heavy with potentiality. While they still had mountains of unresolved emotions to navigate, she felt lighter, renewed by the commitment to be a source of change. If she could inspire a group of rugged truckers to unite against the odds, she could harness the same power to confront her familial ties.
"Let's head back, everyone," Evelyn directed, her voice steady and commanding. "We have warmth and comfort waiting for us in the diner. Stories await as we celebrate our newfound journey." The group felt it, the current of shared responsibility, leaving fears behind. Each step back felt measured. She was defining her legacy, not just of the diner, but within her heart. They walked, side by side, carrying their stories with them, nestled in the folds of the journey that would carry them to where they belonged. Evelyn Jenkins was no longer tied to the past. She had embraced a future full of clarity and strength. With recognition and purpose, she stood firm, an unwavering figure at the heart of community, transformed through connection and confrontation. As the diner came into view, its warmth spilling like molten gold against the icy canvas of despair, Evelyn felt solid confidence at the core of her being. She was where she was meant to be, poised to take on the world, her world, on her own terms. In that moment, she relished her transformation. She had conquered the blizzard. With tangible results in her hand and recognition warm in her heart, nothing could overshadow the accomplishment that was her life now, an intricate blend of aspiration, fulfillment, and unwavering resolve. The diner door swung open, and Evelyn stepped inside, greeted by the laughter of her cherished patrons, the sacred legacy she had built. The love and warmth enveloped her once more, as she realized she would never let go of her narrative. She would only continue to write it, powerfully, boldly, undeniably hers. You need to subscribe now to witness more extraordinary emotional journeys that defy the odds. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and ensure these stories reach more hearts. Comment with your reactions and theories about the ending. We can't wait to hear from you.